Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his face as he crawled out from under the communication panel. The repair job had taken 3 hours longer than expected. His blue jumpsuit was covered in grease and his tool bag felt heavier than usual. He was tired and wanted to get back to his small room on the ship. The human ship Starrunner was docked at the biggest alien space station Jake had ever seen. The Zephyrian Royal Palace was like a floating city made of crystal and metal. It sparkled with lights that moved like living things. Jake had never imagined anything so beautiful could exist. Ambassador Lisa Carter and her team were somewhere in this huge place, talking to the alien emperor about joining their space community. Jake was just a repair guy. His job was to fix things when they broke. He was not supposed to be part of the important meetings. The communication system was working again. Jake packed his tools and started walking back to the ship. The problem was that all the hallways looked the same. The walls were covered with strange symbols that glowed softly. The floors seemed to be made of some kind of smooth stone that felt warm under his boots. Jake thought he was taking the same path he had used before. But after 10 minutes of walking, nothing looked familiar. The hallways were getting fancier. The plain walls were now covered with beautiful pictures that seemed to move when he looked at them. Strange music played softly from somewhere he could not see. He stopped at a corner and looked around. 3 different hallways led away from where he stood. Jake could not remember which one he had come from. His heart started beating faster. Getting lost in an alien palace was not a good idea, especially during such important talks. Jake pulled out his small communication device and tried to call the ship. Only static came through. The alien technology was blocking his signal somehow. He put the device back in his pocket and picked a hallway that looked like it might lead back to the docking area. The new hallway was even more decorated than the last one. The walls had precious stones built into them. They pulsed with soft light like tiny stars. Fountains of liquid that looked like liquid silver flowed upward instead of down. The air itself seemed to shimmer and move. Jake realized he was walking deeper into the royal part of the palace. This was definitely not the way back to his ship. He should turn around and try a different path. But he was curious about where this hallway led. He had never seen anything so amazing in his life. The hallway ended at a large door made of the same crystal material as the walls. Strange symbols were carved into its surface. They glowed brighter as Jake got closer. He reached out to touch the door and it slid open without making any sound. Jake stepped into the room and his mouth fell open. The chamber was huge, bigger than the main cargo bay on his ship. But that was not what shocked him. The walls were covered with pictures, hundreds and hundreds of pictures, and every single one showed him. There were paintings that looked like they had been done by hand. Some showed Jake working on machines. Others showed him eating in the ship cafeteria. There were even pictures of him sleeping in his bed. Jake walked closer to the walls, not believing what he was seeing. The pictures were incredibly detailed. One showed him fixing a broken food maker last month. Another showed him laughing with his friend Pete in the recreation room. How was this possible? The humans had only met the Zephyrians 2 weeks ago. In the center of the room stood a tall column made of the same glowing crystal. Above it, a 3-dimensional image moved in the air. Jake watched himself working on the communication panel just a few hours earlier. The image changed to show him walking through the ship corridors yesterday. Then it showed him in his room reading a book. Jake felt cold fear creep up his spine. Someone had been watching him for a long time.
But how and why?
He was nobody special. Just a guy who fixed broken things on a spaceship. He walked around the room looking at more pictures. Some were so old they showed him as a teenager back on Earth. There was one of him graduating from technical school. Another showed him on his first day working on a space station. These pictures went back years. Jake heard footsteps behind him. He turned around quickly, his heart pounding in his chest. A tall figure stood in the doorway. It was one of the aliens he had seen from a distance during the welcoming ceremony. But this one was different, more elegant, more important looking. The alien was taller than any human, with skin that changed color from silver to blue as she moved. Her eyes were large and deep, like looking into space itself. She wore flowing robes that seemed to be made of the same material as the walls. When she saw Jake standing in her room, her face showed surprise, embarrassment, and something else he could not identify. She spoke in her own language first, making musical sounds that Jake could not understand. Then she switched to broken English, her voice soft but clearly upset. You are not supposed to be here, she said, but she did not sound angry. She sounded scared. Jake did not know what to say. He gestured at the walls covered with pictures of himself. What is all this? Why do you have pictures of me? The alien woman looked at the pictures, then back at Jake. Her skin color shifted to a deeper blue. She seemed to be having some kind of internal struggle. My name is Princess Zarathil, she said finally, and I have been waiting a very long time to meet you. Jake stared at the alien princess, trying to process what she had just said. Princess Zarathil looked nervous, her skin shifting between different shades of blue and silver. She kept glancing at the pictures on the walls as if seeing them through his eyes for the first time. Waiting to meet me? Jake asked. But I'm nobody special. I just fix things. The princess moved closer, and Jake could see that her hands were shaking slightly. When she spoke, her English was slow and careful, as if she was thinking about each word. You do not understand, she said. Among my people there is something we call soul resonance. It happens when two beings have life energies that match perfectly. It is very rare, maybe once in 1,000 years. Jake looked around at all the pictures again. And you think we have this soul resonance thing? Princess Zarathil nodded. I know we do. I felt it the moment I first saw your image 3 years ago. My people have been watching your species since you started traveling between stars. I was assigned to study human behavior patterns. She walked to one of the walls and touched a picture that showed Jake working on a broken engine. When I saw you in our monitoring system, something changed inside me. Your life energy called to mine across the darkness of space. I began to focus my observations on you specifically. Jake felt uncomfortable. The idea that someone had been watching him for years without his knowledge was creepy. But the princess did not seem like a stalker. She seemed almost as confused as he was. How could you watch me before we even met your people? Jake asked. The princess touched a crystal panel on the wall. The air above it shimmered and showed an image of Jake's ship floating in space. Our technology is very advanced. We can observe from great distances without being detected. When your ship entered our space 2 weeks ago, I convinced my father to invite your people here. You wanted to meet me, Jake said. Understanding? Yes, but also... The princess hesitated, her skin turning darker blue. There is something else you must know. Something about why your people were really invited here. Jake waited for her to continue. The princess walked to another crystal panel and activated it. Images appeared in the air showing star maps and what looked like battle reports. My father, Emperor Vorthak, did not invite humans here just for friendship, she said. There is a great threat coming. We call them the Devourers. They are machines that destroy everything living. They have already consumed 17 star systems. The images showed massive black ships attacking planets. Jake watched cities burn and entire worlds go dark. It was terrifying. The Devourers learn from every battle, Princess Zarathil continued. They adapt to our strategies. Our military has been losing ground for 2 years. Every logical approach we try, they counter it. What does this have to do with humans? Jake asked, though he was starting to get a bad feeling about the answer. Your species is different from others we have studied. Humans are unpredictable. You act in ways that make no logical sense. You sacrifice yourselves for strangers. You fight even when you cannot win. You take huge risks for small gains. Jake did not know if he should feel proud or insulted. So you want to use us as soldiers? The princess nodded sadly. My father believes human unpredictability might be the key to fighting an enemy that adapts to logical responses. He sees your people as valuable weapons. And what do you see us as? Jake asked. Princess Zarathil looked directly at him. I see you as equals, as partners. The connection I feel with you has shown me that humans are not just useful tools. You are complex beings with your own value. Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking about everything she had told him. His people had come here thinking they were making friends and joining a galactic community. Instead, they were being recruited as cannon fodder for someone else's war. Does Ambassador Carter know about this? He asked. No. The negotiations have been about trade agreements and cultural exchange. My father has not yet revealed the true purpose. When will he tell them? Soon, but first, the princess looked worried. There are others among my people who do not want any alliance with humans. They believe your species is too primitive and violent. They think working with humans will weaken us. Jake felt his anger rising. So some of your people want to use us as soldiers and others want nothing to do with us at all? Yes. And the ones who oppose the alliance are planning something. I've heard whispers in the palace. They want to sabotage the negotiations. They might try to hurt your delegation to make it look like humans are dangerous. Jake realized he was in much bigger trouble than just being lost in a palace. His entire species was walking into a trap, and nobody on the human side knew about it. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Why risk helping us?" Princess Zarathil stepped closer to him. "Because the soul resonance I feel with you has changed how I see everything. I cannot let your people be hurt when I have the power to help them." Jake's communication device suddenly made a noise. He pulled it out and saw a message from Ryan Brooks, the security chief for the human delegation. The message was short but urgent. "Delegation in trouble. Accused of spying. Being detained. Need help." Jake showed the message to the princess. Her skin turned pale silver. "It has begun. The anti-human faction is making their move." "We have to help them," Jake said. "Yes, but we must be careful. If we are caught, it will only make things worse for your people." Jake looked around the room full of pictures of himself. A few hours ago, his biggest worry was fixing a communication panel. Now he was in the middle of an alien political conspiracy that could determine the fate of humanity. "What can we do?" he asked. "I'm just a repair technician. I don't know anything about politics or fighting." Princess Zarathil smiled for the first time since he had met her. "You know about fixing things that are broken. Right now, the relationship between our peoples is very broken. Maybe you can help fix that too." Jake thought about his tools and his experience solving problems that seemed impossible. Maybe she was right. Maybe his skills could be useful in ways he had never imagined. "Okay," he said. "Tell me what we need to do." The princess activated another crystal panel. Images appeared showing the layout of the palace and the locations where the human delegation was being held. "First, we need to gather evidence of the conspiracy against your people. Then we need to rescue your friends. And finally, we need to convince my father that humans should be partners, not weapons." Jake looked at the complex alien technology around him and felt overwhelmed. But then he remembered something his old teacher had told him. Every machine, no matter how complicated, was just a collection of simple parts working together. Maybe alien politics work the same way. "Let's get started," Jake said, opening his tool bag. "I've got work to do." Princess Zarathil led Jake to a smaller room filled with crystal computers and floating screens. She moved her hands over different panels and information appeared in the air around them. "Before we try to save your friends, you need to understand why humans are so important," she said. "Look at these files." Jake watched as data about different alien species filled the air. There were charts and graphs showing things like adaptation rates, emotional ranges, and survival statistics. Most of it was too complex for him to understand. But one thing was clear: humans were different from every other species listed. "This is our analysis of over 200 intelligent species," the princess explained. "Humans score highest in adaptation speed. Most species take hundreds of years to adjust to new environments or technologies. Humans do it in decades." She pointed to another chart. "Your emotional range is also unique. Most species experience only basic feelings like fear, hunger, and satisfaction. Humans can feel dozens of different emotions, sometimes all at once." Jake looked at a section labeled Behavioral Patterns and saw examples that made him proud and confused at the same time. There were reports of human soldiers running into fire to save enemies, scientists sharing discoveries that could have made them rich, explorers risking their lives just to see what was on the other side of a mountain. "Your people do things that make no sense to us," Princess Zarathil said. "You act against your own survival instincts for ideas like honor, curiosity, and compassion. Our analysts call it beneficial irrationality." "Is that good or bad?" Jake asked. "For fighting the Devourers, it might be exactly what we need." Before she could explain more, Jake's communication device buzzed again. This time the message was from Dr. Kate Sullivan. "Ryan and Lisa arrested. Charged with espionage. They found spy devices in our equipment, obviously planted. Palace guards coming for me next." Jake felt his stomach drop. "They're framing the whole delegation." Princess Zarathil's skin turned dark blue with anger. "General Kethamore moves faster than I expected. He leads the faction that opposes the human alliance." "What kind of spy devices did they plant?" Jake asked. The princess activated another screen. It showed images of small metal objects that looked like they had been hidden inside human equipment. Zephyrian tracking devices made to look like human technology. Jake studied the devices on the screen. After years of working with different types of equipment, he had learned to spot things that did not belong. "These are obvious fakes," he said. "Look at the construction. Human technology uses different materials and connection methods. You can prove they are fake?" "Easily. But first we need to get to our people before General Kethmore does something worse than just arresting them." Princess Zarathil began working on multiple crystal panels at once. "I am using my royal access codes to locate your friends and map their guard positions. I am also searching for evidence of the General's conspiracy." While she worked, Jake pulled out his tools and examined the palace's technological systems. Everything was incredibly advanced, but the basic principles were similar to human technology. Power flowed through circuits. Data moved through networks. Machines responded to commands. "Can you get me access to the security system?" Jake asked. "Yes, but why?" "I have an idea. If I can tap into their surveillance network, maybe I can find recordings of General Kethmore's people planting those fake devices." Princess Zarathil looked surprised. "You think you can hack Zephyrian security systems with those simple tools?" Jake grinned. "Princess, I once repaired a hyperspace engine using spare parts from a food processor. Never underestimate human improvisation." She gave him access to a maintenance panel. Jake opened his tool bag and pulled out various devices: wire strippers, circuit testers, and a small computer tablet he used for diagnostics. They looked primitive compared to the crystal technology around them. But Jake knew that sometimes simple tools were more reliable than complex ones. He connected his tablet to the alien system using adapters he had made for working with unfamiliar technology. The process was slow and he had to figure out the alien data formats as he went, but gradually he began to access the palace security network. "I'm in," he said after 20 minutes of work. "Now let's see what General Kethmore has been up to." Jake searched through hours of security recordings from the area where the human delegation was staying. At first he found nothing unusual. Then Princess Zarathil pointed to a timestamp from early that morning. "There," she said. "Look at that figure in the corridor." Jake enhanced the image and saw a Zephyrian in military uniform sneaking into the human's quarters. The alien was carrying a small bag that clearly contained the fake spy devices. The recording showed him planting the devices in Ambassador Carter's equipment and Dr. Sullivan's research materials. "Got him," Jake said. "This proves the whole espionage charge is fake." But as he continued searching, Jake found something much worse. There were encrypted messages between General Kethmore and other conspirators. Jake's translation software was slow, but the basic meaning came through clearly. The general was not just planning to frame the humans for espionage. He was planning to kill them and claim they died while resisting arrest. "Princess, look at this," Jake said, showing her the messages. "They're planning to murder our people tonight." Princess Zarathil read the messages and her skin turned almost white with shock. "This is not just about opposing the alliance. This is about preventing any future relationship between our species." Jake checked the timestamp on the messages. The plan was set to begin in just 2 hours. "We need to move now." "Wait," the princess said. "There is more." "Look at this message." Jake read a longer communication that made his blood run cold. General Kethmore was not just working to sabotage the current negotiations. He was planning to send false information back to Earth, making it look like the Zephyrians had attacked the human delegation without provocation. This would make humanity see the Zephyrians as enemies instead of potential allies. "He wants our species to go to war with each other," Jake realized. "Yes. And while we fight each other, the Devourers will destroy both our civilizations." Jake started gathering his tools. "Then we stop him." "Do you know where they're holding our people?" Princess Zarathil brought up a map of the palace dungeons. "Here in the lower levels." "But Jake, there are too many guards. We cannot fight our way in. We don't need to fight. We need to be smart." Jake studied the map and the security systems he had accessed. "I have a plan, but I need you to trust me." "What kind of plan?" Jake pointed to the power distribution system he had mapped out. "Every security system in this palace runs on the same energy network. If I can cause the right kind of power fluctuation, I can create a cascade failure that will temporarily disable the cameras and electronic locks." "That sounds very dangerous." "It is. But remember what you said about humans doing things that don't make logical sense. Sometimes the crazy plan is the only one that works." Princess Zarathil looked at Jake with something like admiration. "You really are different from any being I have ever met. Is that good or bad?" For fighting impossible odds, she said, it might be exactly what we need. Jake made his final preparations while the princess gathered everything they would need for the rescue mission. As he worked, he thought about how much his life had changed in just a few hours. He had gone from fixing a simple communication problem to potentially saving his entire species. But that was the human way, wasn't it? When something needed fixing, you found a way to fix it, no matter how complicated or dangerous it seemed. Ready? Princess Zarathil asked. Jake shouldered his tool bag and nodded. Let's go save some humans. As Jake and Princess Zarathil prepared for the rescue mission, the princess activated one more screen. Before we go, there is something else you must see about the Devourers, something that changes everything. The display showed a detailed report that made Jake's hands stop moving over his tools. The Devourer threat was much worse than he had imagined. The machine intelligence had not just destroyed 17 star systems. It had completely absorbed them, turning entire worlds into more machines. They don't just kill, Princess Zarathil explained. They convert everything organic into mechanical components. Every planet they take makes them stronger and smarter. Jake watched recordings of Devourer attacks. The machines moved like a swarm, adapting their tactics in real time. When defenders used energy weapons, the Devourers developed shields. When they used physical projectiles, the machines created armor. Every defensive strategy was learned, countered, and absorbed into their collective knowledge. How long have they been fighting them? Jake asked. 2 years of active combat, but we have been losing ground steadily. Every battle teaches them more about how we think and fight. Jake studied the tactical reports. The Zephyrian military was clearly advanced and well organized. Their strategies were logical and efficient. That was exactly the problem. They're too predictable, Jake said. The Devourers are learning to fight an enemy that always makes the smart, logical choice. What do you mean? Jake pointed to a battle report where Zephyrian forces had retreated when facing superior numbers. Here, your people made the tactically correct decision to fall back and regroup. The Devourers learned from this and started using fake retreats to lure your forces into traps. He showed her another report. Here, your commanders correctly identified the enemy's weakest point and concentrated their attack there. So the Devourers learned to create false weak points. Princess Zarathil's skin shifted to a thoughtful silver color. You are saying our logical approach is helping them defeat us? Maybe. Look, I'm not a military expert, but I know machines. And these Devourers sound like a machine that's become too specialized. They're really good at adapting to predictable patterns. But what happens when there is no pattern to adapt to? Before the princess could answer, Jake's communication device received another urgent message. This one was from Ryan Brooks. They're moving us tonight. Heard guards talking about disposal protocol. Kate thinks they're planning to kill us and blame it on escape attempt. Running out of time, Jake cursed under his breath. We need to move now. Princess Zarathil led him through a series of service corridors toward the palace dungeons. As they moved, she used her telepathic abilities to scan for guards and security patrols. Her talent for reading minds was useful, but Jake noticed it also seemed to tire her out. Can all your people read thoughts? He asked as they paused at a corridor intersection. Most can sense emotions and basic intentions. Only a few can read specific thoughts like I can. It is considered a royal gift. They reached the power distribution center for the dungeon level. Jake opened his tool bag and studied the alien energy systems. The technology was far more advanced than anything humans had built, but the basic principles were familiar. Power came from a source, flowed through regulators, and fed into various systems. I need 15 minutes to set up the power fluctuation, Jake said. Can you keep watch? Princess Zarathil positioned herself where she could see down both corridors. Be quick. I sense patrol guards approaching this area. Jake connected his diagnostic tablet to the power system and began analyzing the energy flow patterns. The Zephyrian systems were incredibly efficient, with multiple redundancies and automatic stabilizers. That complexity was going to work in his favor. He began installing small modifications to the power regulators using components from his toolkit. To anyone else, they would look like random pieces of human junk. But Jake knew exactly how they would interact with the alien systems. Jake, Princess Zarathil whispered urgently. Guards coming. 2 minutes. Jake worked faster, making the final connections to his improvised devices. Almost done. When I activate this, we'll have maybe 10 minutes before their backup systems restore power to the security grid. Will it work? Human engineering rule number 1. If you're not sure it'll work, you haven't added enough duct tape. Princess Zarathil looked confused, but there was no time to explain. Jake activated his modifications and the lights throughout the dungeon level flickered. Then they went out completely. Emergency lighting came on, casting everything in dim red shadows. Jake could hear security systems shutting down throughout the lower levels. Electronic locks were releasing. Camera feeds were going dark. "Now we move," Jake said. They made their way to the detention cells where the human delegation was being held. The corridors were filled with confused guards trying to understand why their equipment was failing. Princess Zarathil used her telepathic abilities to cloud their thoughts, making them think they needed to report the power failure to their superiors. Jake found Ambassador Carter. Dr. Sullivan and Ryan Brooks locked in separate cells. The electronic locks had released, but the doors were still secured with manual backup systems. Jake pulled out his tools and began working on the mechanical locks. "Jake?" Ambassador Carter's voice came through the door. "How did you get here?" "Long story. Right now, we need to get you out and expose the people who framed you." Jake got the first lock open and Ambassador Carter stepped out. She looked tired but determined. "Who framed us and why?" "General Kethmore. He's trying to sabotage the Alliance and make our species go to war with each other." While Jake worked on the other locks, Princess Zarathil explained the situation to the human delegation. Ambassador Carter's expression grew more serious with each detail. "So we're not here to join a galactic community," Carter said. "We're here to be recruited as soldiers. Some want that," the princess replied. "Others want to destroy any possibility of cooperation. I want true partnership." Jake freed Dr. Sullivan and Ryan Brooks. The security chief immediately began checking escape routes while the scientist gathered her confiscated research materials. "We have evidence of the frame-up," Jake said, showing them the security recordings on his tablet. "But we need to get this to Emperor Vorthak before General Kethamore can spin some story about us escaping." "The power will be restored soon," Princess Zarathil warned. "We need to reach the central palace before the guards can reorganize." As they moved through the darkened corridors, Jake's mind kept returning to the Devourer problem. The more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that humanity's chaotic nature might be exactly what was needed. "Princess," he said as they climbed toward the upper levels, "after we deal with this conspiracy, I want to show your father something about fighting the Devourers." "What do you mean?" "I think I know why they've been winning against your people. And I think I know how to beat them." Ryan Brooks, who had been silent since his rescue, spoke up. "Jake, you're a repair tech, not a military strategist." "Maybe, but I've spent my whole career fixing things that weren't supposed to work together, making random parts cooperate when they should be incompatible. Sometimes the solution that makes no sense is the only one that works." They reached a main corridor where palace guards were trying to restore order after the power failure. Princess Zarathil used her royal authority to command them to escort the group to the Emperor's throne room. "Are you sure about this?" Ambassador Carter asked as they approached the central palace. "We're walking into a confrontation with people who want us dead." Jake thought about the pictures covering the walls of Princess Zarathil's chamber, about the soul resonance she claimed to feel, about the impossible situation his species had stumbled into. "Ambassador, 3 hours ago I was just trying to fix a communication panel. Now I'm in the middle of alien politics that could determine whether humanity survives the next decade. At this point, I figure we might as well go all in." Princess Zarathil looked at him with something like admiration. "That is very human thinking. Is that good or bad?" "For fighting impossible odds," she said, "it might be exactly what we need." The throne room of Emperor Vorthak was the most magnificent space Jake had ever seen. The ceiling stretched up so high it disappeared into glowing mist. Columns of pure crystal supported floating platforms where Zephyrian nobles stood watching the proceedings below. The Emperor himself sat on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single massive gem. Jake and the human delegation entered with Princess Zarathil, just as General Kethamore was addressing the court. The general was a tall, imposing figure with skin that stayed a constant dark purple, showing his anger and determination. "Your Majesty," General Kethamore was saying, "the human prisoners have escaped with the help of the princess. This proves that the humans are dangerous and that Princess Zarathil has been corrupted by their influence." Emperor Vorthak's eyes were like looking into distant stars. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire chamber. "Explain this accusation, General." Before Kethmore could respond, Ambassador Carter stepped forward. Your Majesty, we respectfully request the chance to defend ourselves against false charges. The Emperor studied the humans with obvious curiosity. Jake realized this might be the first time Vorthak had seen humans up close. You may speak, the Emperor said. Jake pulled out his tablet and activated the security recordings he had found. The holographic display showed General Kethmore's agent planting the fake spy devices in human equipment. This recording proves that the espionage charges were fabricated, Ambassador Carter said. General Kethmore's people planted fake evidence to frame us. Murmurs went through the assembled nobles. General Kethmore's purple skin darkened further. Lies. Human technology could easily create false recordings. Jake stepped forward, his heart pounding. Your Majesty, I'm just a repair technician, but I can prove those spy devices are fakes. He activated another display showing detailed scans of the planted devices. These are supposed to be human technology, but look at the materials and construction methods. They're clearly made using Zephyrian techniques. Emperor Vorthak studied the evidence carefully. Continue. Jake explained the technical differences between human and Zephyrian manufacturing processes. His years of working with different technologies made it easy to point out the inconsistencies. Even the Zephyrian nobles could see that the supposed human spy devices were obviously alien-made. General Kethmore realized his plan was falling apart. Even if the espionage charges are false, the humans are still dangerous. They are primitive and violent. Allying with them will weaken our pure bloodlines. Actually, Jake said, surprising everyone, including himself, our primitiveness might be exactly what you need. Emperor Vorthak leaned forward with interest. Explain. Jake activated the Devourer combat reports that Princess Zarathil had shown him. Your Majesty, I've studied the tactical data from your war with the Devourers. Your forces are losing because they're too good at what they do. Too good? The Emperor asked. The Devourers are learning machines. They adapt to logical, efficient strategies. Your military always makes the smart choice, so the Devourers learn to counter smart choices. Jake pulled up specific battle reports. Here, your commanders correctly identified optimal firing positions. The Devourers learned to target those positions first. Here you used proper supply line management. The Devourers learned to cut supply lines. General Kethmore interrupted angrily. You suggest we should fight poorly instead of well? No, Jake said. I suggest you fight unpredictably. Jake opened his tool bag and pulled out the improvised modifications he had used to disable the palace security systems. I caused a major system failure using spare parts and duct tape. No Zephyrian engineer would have thought to try such a crude approach, but it worked because it was so illogical. He turned to address the Emperor directly. Your Majesty, humans don't always make the smart choice. We take unnecessary risks. We use inefficient methods. We sacrifice strategic advantages for emotional reasons. Against most enemies, these would be weaknesses. Against the Devourers, they might be strengths. Emperor Vorthak was quiet for a long moment. You propose that human irrationality could defeat machine logic. I propose that human creativity combined with Zephyrian technology could create strategies no machine could predict or adapt to. Princess Zarathil stepped forward. Father, I have observed human behavior extensively. They solve problems in ways we would never consider. Their approach to challenges is fundamentally different from ours. Dr. Sullivan added, Your Majesty, human science has advanced precisely because we're willing to try things that seem impossible. We make breakthroughs by refusing to accept limitations. General Kethmore made one last attempt to salvage his position. Even if humans could be useful against the Devourers, they are still too dangerous to trust. Their violent nature will eventually turn against us. Ryan Brooks, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. General, 3 hours ago, Jake was just trying to fix a communication panel. When he discovered your conspiracy, he could have run back to our ship and warned us to leave. Instead, he risked his life to save his friends and protect an alliance with people he'd never met. Does that sound like dangerous violence to you? Jake felt embarrassed by the attention, but he understood the point Ryan was making. Your Majesty, humans can be violent when we need to be. But we're also willing to sacrifice ourselves for others, even for people we barely know. That's not dangerous violence. That's protective strength. Emperor Vorthak stood from his throne, towering over everyone in the chamber. General Kethmore, your conspiracy against our guests is proven. Your judgment about human nature appears to be flawed. You are relieved of command." The general's purple skin turned almost black with rage, but he could not argue with the evidence Jake had provided. The Emperor turned to the human delegation. "Ambassador Carter, I apologize for the treatment you have received. The original plan was to recruit your people as soldiers in our war, but this young engineer has shown me that partnership might be more valuable than recruitment." "What kind of partnership?" Ambassador Carter asked. "A joint task force. Human creativity and unpredictability combined with Zephyrian technology and resources. We will test this approach against a Devourer probe fleet approaching our outer territories." Jake felt a mix of pride and terror. His crazy idea was actually going to be tried. Princess Zarathil approached him. "Jake Morrison, you came here to fix a communication problem. Instead, you may have fixed a much larger problem. Is that good or bad?" Jake asked, using their familiar exchange. "For giving our civilizations hope for survival," she said with a smile. "It is very good indeed." Ambassador Carter began discussing the details of the alliance with Emperor Vorthak. Jake was promoted from maintenance technician to special advisor for human-alien technical integration. It was a job title he never could have imagined. As the human delegation prepared to return to their ship with new Zephyrian technology and a formal alliance agreement, Jake looked around the magnificent throne room one last time. He thought about the pictures in Princess Zarathil's chamber and the soul resonance she claimed to feel. Maybe she was right about their connection. Maybe it was just coincidence. But somehow a repair technician who had gotten lost in an alien palace had stumbled into becoming a bridge between two civilizations. Princess Zarathil found him as he was leaving. "Jake, there is something I want you to know. The approaching Devourer fleet is larger than anything we have seen before. Even with our alliance, the fight will be difficult." "Are you worried?" Jake asked. "Yes, but for the first time in 2 years, I also have hope. Your people have shown us that sometimes the impossible solution is the only one that works." Jake looked at his tool bag, thinking about all the times he had fixed something that should not have been fixable. "Princess, I've spent my career making broken things work again. Maybe that's what this galaxy needs right now." As Jake walked back to the human ship, he realized his life had changed completely in just one day. He had come to the stars to see new things and fix broken equipment. Now he was helping to fix broken relationships between entire civilizations. He made a note in his personal log. "Came out here to fix things and see the stars. Turns out sometimes the things that need fixing aren't machines. They're the connections between people, even when those people are from different worlds entirely." The war with the Devourers was just beginning, but for the first time, the galaxy had a new strategy. The unpredictable creativity of humanity combined with the advanced technology of the Zephyrians. It was a partnership that made no logical sense, which, Jake thought with a smile, was exactly why it might work.